How can God love me?
What is my purpose?
What happens after death?
Why do bad things keep happening to me?
Who is God?
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of Ask GHCC. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for following with us every week and for the comments you're sending in about all the ways that these things are helping, and even sometimes the way that you may disagree or follow-up questions that these issues are creating. This week's Ask GHCC actually is a follow-up to what we were talking about with the Planned Parenthood video. And basically it comes from a lady who is saying, if abortion is murder because it ends the life of a child in the womb, then God must be the ultimate murder abortionist because of all the miscarriages that go on. First of all, I want to make something really, really clear, and this is important. If you've had an abortion, I want you to know that God is a very forgiving God. And while you wouldn't want to go on and have another one, God can reach you where you're at. You confess those things to Him, trust Jesus Christ and His atonement, and God will forgive you for that. He can cleanse you of that. He will not hold it against you. And secondly, if you've had a miscarriage, I want you to know only if someone has walked down that road as you have can they know the depth of the pain that that creates for you and your husband. But I want you to know that a miscarriage is not an abortion. And here's what's really going on with this issue. First of all, God is the author of all life. It says in Psalm 139, David wrote, "You saw my unformed body, and all the days ordained for me before one of them came to be." God is the author of life, and that means He decides when life begins, ultimately, and He decides when it ends. And He's the only one that has the authority to do that. That's what makes suicide so wrong. It's the intervention and taking of a life that God has not ordained. And so when a miscarriage occurs, God has decided that in the womb, whether that baby was just a few days old and still in embryonic form, or whether that child was weeks or months old, or whether the child lives full term and then dies in birth as a stillborn child, or whether that life goes on to be 3 years old or 10 years old or 110. God is the one who determines the length of life, and every human life has the days ordained for it by God. So the little one who dies in the womb, just a few days old, through a miscarriage, has fulfilled God's eternal purpose for that life. And someday when we get to heaven, God will show us how that human life, even cut short in that miscarriage, has fulfilled the perfect plan of God. And somebody who is 110 years old and eventually dies, and has what we would call a full life, God will show how that life fulfilled His eternal purpose and the length of life of everyone in between. So because God is the author of life, He determines when it starts and when it ends. God is not an abortionist, and He's not a murderer. He is God, the author of life, who gives every day as it was ordained by Him for His eternal purpose. And there is one other follow-up question that we'd like to address today briefly, and that's this. One that's very common. In the case of a rape, how would God feel about the mother terminating that pregnancy with an abortion? I think I mentioned before that because all life is of God and He is the author of it, then once that child is conceived, that child is a fully human life, ordained of God with a plan and eternal purpose. As horrendous as the situations are that sometimes create pregnancies through rape or incest or other unfortunate events, it doesn't diminish or change the fact that once conception occurs, God intends for that life to have a full and complete purpose according to Him. So even in the case of rape, as difficult as it is, the life should continue and the baby be born. Maybe the mother decides to give it up for adoption, but there is no justification for the ending of a human life in the mother's womb. And those who have been raped or been made pregnant by horrific circumstances should be surrounded by people to love them and encourage them and help them through the whole process, including the decision of whether they keep or give the child to another loving family.
How can God love me?
What is my purpose?
What happens after death?
Why do bad things keep happening to me?
Who is God?